Councilmember McKeown.
But I think once again, we have seen not only interest on the part of the community in this issue, but a willingness to think long and deep and come up with productive ideas and specific solutions for the problems that we've seen in Santa Monica. And as a council, you know, we are problem solvers. We tend to be detail oriented, and I wouldn't want us to get so tangled up in details tonight that we never get progress off the ground, because I think what we need to do tonight is just make some progress. Tonight on the way to the meeting, I picked up my mail, and there was a copy, the new copy of Newsweek magazine. And the essay, the last word on the back page of the Newsweek that was in my mailbox, is by Anna Quinlan. It's called Dialing for Dollars, and it's about the whole national debate on campaign finance reform and public financing of campaigns. So we're operating here in a context where, frankly, the whole country is talking about this. And as I've mentioned before, when I was in Washington, D.C. last spring, I was lucky to happen to be at the House Judiciary Committee the day that Senator Barack Obama introduced the bill that he was sponsoring to clean up campaigns. The whole country is talking about this. Our democracy is in trouble, but we're not the whole country. You know, we're Santa Monica. And I really want to thank, besides the public, the city clerk and her staff, because they've done an incredible job of researching what has happened in Santa Monica elections, giving us the picture year by year, and what's being done in other communities and how it might relate to what we could do here. When Edison was perfecting the light bulb upon which we all relied until we got fluorescence, you know, the first 100 things he tried didn't work. It took him a long time to find tungsten. And a lot of times, it's the things you find that don't work that lead you forward to what finally does work. And so I really thank the city clerk's staff, although tonight we may not take any one of the options 1 through 6. We may come up with an option 7. As I've looked at these, I've tried to walk through the process of deciding what really fits Santa Monica and which of these options we more or less have to eliminate because they will cost more in terms of time, money, or other resources than they'll deliver in solving Santa Monica's problems. They might be good options to solve another community's problems or a state's problems or the country's problems, but maybe they don't really do what we need here in Santa Monica. And I've relied in trying to judge these options a lot on what I heard at the public workshops. What I heard at the public workshops, frankly, is that for the most part, what we do in Santa Monica is working, and working exceptionally well. We have an engaged electorate that most communities would be very, very envious of, and I'm very proud of. We have people who really care about what happens in Santa Monica. We have a grassroots fundraising base. We had one gentleman speak from an independent expenditure campaign that's been active for over 25 years, effectively getting candidates elected in this town and doing it grassroots and small donations. We have local advocacy groups supporting candidates. We have candidates who run from the community and who run on small donations that they get from their neighbors and effectively run and get elected. We already have public support being offered to our candidates, and I thank the staff for that being outlined in the supplemental report we got tonight. The total is something between $13,500 and $18,500 per candidate in terms of city TV and website and free candidate statements and free filings that other communities don't do, that Santa Monica provides to each and every candidate based on just collecting 100 signatures, not even have to get the $5 qualifying donation. So I guess what we have to think about is what is it that doesn't work? And we're hearing loud and clear there's one aspect of elections in Santa Monica that people are concerned about, and that is that over the last few cycles, more and more outside money has come into the race, and more it's been spent on negative campaigning instead of positive campaigning. Frankly, if all the money in the world were being spent to tell what candidates would do to solve this community's problems in a way that educated and informed the electorate, I think that'd probably be a good thing. It's when the money gets turned into making elections a negative experience that people are revolted by that our democracy is not well served. There are a couple of parts of the staff report that really illustrated this. On page 3, the staff compared how much is spent on elections in Santa Monica with what is being spent in comparable communities, those being Boulder, Colorado, and Cary, North Carolina, both of which have about 95,000 residents. In Boulder, it says that the spending limit is $12,000 some odd dollars, and in Cary, North Carolina, the spending limit is $25,000. And as we well know, the figures spent in Santa Monica far, far exceed that, in part because we're a city that has people come in here in the daytime. But the resources of those of us who live here, the residents for whom the election of this council affects their day-to-day life, those resources are based on the population. So we're in that same ballpark, and yet the amount of money being spent here is 10 or more times as much as a comparable community would spend. That in itself creates the potential for a problem. Where it turns into a problem is illustrated on page 10 of the report, where it shows the independent expenditures and how they have burgeoned in the last couple of election cycles. And it's been something like 300% since the last cycle and 800% since 2002. That's an incredible increase. That really is a red flag that I think we have to take seriously. So if we have a lot of money coming into a race that outspends what this community itself can possibly do to elect its own candidates, and where it's going negative instead of positive and going toward attacking people as opposed to solving problems and educating the public, which is what elections ought to be about. How do we solve that? And this group, Vote for SM, has it's voter-owned transparent elections for Santa Monica, and it includes a number of different groups, some of whom spoke tonight. The League of Women Voters has been involved in some of the decisions they've made, Common Cause, Americans for Democratic Action, the local Democratic Club. The Commission for the Status of Women in Santa Monica was actually the group that brought this issue to us in the first place about a year ago, and the Center for Governmental Studies has offered to help. So we have some real expertise here, and over the last few months, what they have settled on is that the full public financing model may be beyond what we need and what we can afford and what's productive for Santa Monica. But that what we should try to do is make it less likely that people will use their resources, which under the law they're allowed to use and spend as they want to, but at least make it less likely that they will use it in a negative way. Try to encourage its being used in a positive way. And what that came out to was this concept of a fair fight fund. That could have any one of a number of different permutations. And I don't think we need to decide that tonight if we simply ask our staff to investigate how it might work. It might be that any independent expenditure campaign that declares itself as having its purpose on its filing as being against a candidate immediately is watched. And when the aggregate spending of such groups against any one candidate exceeds some preset limit, which we determine, that is determined to be a negative campaign of significance and causes a fair fight fund to come into effect. Yes, that would include money spent by people within the city as well as by people spending money from outside the city. But the reality is that whenever there have been education attempts that are negative by people within the city, the amount of money spent is fairly small because the resources are the resources of a 95,000 member community. It's the outside money that has really begun to distort democracy here. And so if the thresholds were properly set, I think we would not impede the ability of residents to be heard positively or negatively on issues within the city, but we could avoid these extravagant attack campaigns, which I fear are going to happen again. Now, I may not run again in 3 years. I may never run again. But this sort of thing is increasing year after year after year. So I am an example, but I'm not the reason to do this. The reason to do this is to have a sustainable political future for grassroots organizing and politics in Santa Monica, where this community has some control over its own future. And there's nothing, I think, more important to a community than being in control of its future and who represents it. And that's the group of us up here. So I'm going to suggest that we go with that Fair Fight Fund concept. And tonight that we direct staff, we don't need to come up with the details, but just direct staff to look into what it would take to have a true Santa Monica solution, not the Nebraska model, but a Santa Monica model, where we establish some workable definition of attack campaign. We determine a dollar limit beyond which such attacks really do begin to distort local democracy. And then we figure out a way to protect the attacked candidates with a fair fight fund. All the amounts, all the thresholds are for further debate, but I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to begin investigation of a fair fight fund under those terms that I just described.
I'll second it.